Thank you for joining us for Create Content for Product Overlay and Tabletop Experiences for Service. Now I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, Julian Ferrett, Senior Technical Specialist. Welcome, Julian.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who's joining us here today. My name, again, is Julian Ferrett. I'm a Senior Technical Specialist with PTC. A little bit of background about myself. I've been working with PTC for the past 8 years and have almost a generalist type of background across the board with a variety of different types of PTC products, including PTC Creo CAD, Windchill, our Service Lifecycle Management Suite, as well as Augmented Reality. In the first demonstration, what we're going to be covering is using Creo Illustrate to create some high-quality technical animations in support of augmented reality. More specifically, we're going to be creating 2 different types of experiences in which we'll leverage off of one to create the second one very quick and very easy. I'm going to be taking on the role as an illustrator in this first demonstration, and we're going to be using, again, Creo Illustrate version 5.0 as well as Windchill 11.1. So let's go ahead and jump into the applications themselves. So first off, we're going to go ahead and start out in Windchill. And as you can see, I'm looking at a bill of material structure in my Windchill environment as an illustrator. Here you can see I have visualization of the model. This is for a front suspension of a snowmobile. I have the bill of material structure. And what is important to me is I want to create these experiences and these animations with Creo Illustrate so that it is directly tied to this CAD geometry. Windchill allows me to navigate to our Representations tab and create publish jobs in order to use that information within Creo Illustrate. So here you can see, if I scroll down to the bottom, I actually have 2 jobs that I've created here, 2 different types of versions of those jobs that I can import directly into Creo Illustrate. It contains the geometry and it's very lightweight and file sized. So let's go ahead now and jump into Creo Illustrate. This is Creo Illustrate version 5.0. I'm going to be leveraging the direct connection. I'm connected directly up to my Windchill environment, and I'm going to go ahead and pull in some illustrations that I've already started working on. If I click the Open button, here you can see that it's showing me I'm connected to my Windchill environment, my snowmobile product, and maybe a graphics folder where some of my content might reside. Let's go ahead and open up a couple of these to take a look at some of the content you can create with Creo Illustrate. So first off, I have some illustrations involving the ski as well as the suspension. Some things you can create in Creo Illustrate could be repurposed for publishing out to 2D, right? So something I could put in a parts book, a parts manual, some technical documentation, right? So this is all different types of graphics that we can create leveraging directly off the CAD with Creo Illustrate. What we're going to focus on in the demonstration today is creating animations for augmented reality. So let's go ahead and close out this graphic, and we're going to open up another one here. So as this graphic is opening, just to kind of describe what we're going to be doing, we're going to be creating an animation to go about the removal of the actual ski, to show somebody, you know, how you physically take the ski off of the spindle. Maybe you need to replace it because the ski is damaged or broken. Here you can see that in Creo Illustrate, the geometry has loaded. I only have one figure displayed right now in Creo Illustrate, and this is the figure that I'm going to work on and create the animation. I also have a couple different types of other models that I've imported in as well. So library components. You can bring in arrows and tools and wrenches and use those and display those in your augmented reality experience. So let's go ahead and start creating an animation. The first thing I'm going to do is jump to my animation tab. And we're going to create what we call a sequence. These are, in essence, workflow instructions. So let's go ahead and click the sequence button. Notice I have a step editor that pops up on the left-hand side of my screen where I can create a variety of different types of animated steps. So what is the first thing that we need to do in this animation? Well, the first thing we need to do is take off some of the hardware here for the ski. So let's go ahead and use some of our library components as well. I'm going to go ahead and select on my arrow, maybe choose to fade this arrow in. So we're telling the user, well, focus in on this particular area of the ski. We're going to interact with the hardware first. Maybe the next step in the process is we're going to interact on some of the geometry itself. So I can go ahead and select on the actual bolt or the nut and choose to maybe change the color of it. Let's go ahead and pick a red color. So as you can see, as I'm creating these different types of effects, fade in, change the color, Creo Illustrate is recording all of that content down at the bottom for me. I have interactive tracks that I can click on and drag and choose to edit where need be to update my overall animation. Lastly, let's go ahead and bring in our nut driver. So I'm going to go ahead and select on that and choose to fade that into view as well. Again, I could easily come in here, click and drag, and move my tracks around and position them where I want to easily edit and make changes. Let's go ahead and drag this back to the beginning and hit the play button and see what our first step looks like. As you can see, the arrow is fading in. You can see the color change, and you can see the nut driver fading in. Let's go ahead now and create our second step. Well, what is the next step in the process? Well, we actually need to start removing some of the hardware. I'm going to go ahead and click the Add Step option. It's going to create the second step for me. Maybe the next thing that we want to do is go ahead and select on the actual nut driver itself, and we're going to do a transform. So transform allows us to click and drag and translate and rotate components with respect to a coordinate system. So maybe we'll go ahead and we'll drag the nut driver into place, and we'll go ahead and we'll actually rotate this nut driver along with the nut itself. So I can select on both components at one time and choose to rotate. Maybe we'll go ahead and rotate this 180 degrees. I can even type in that value and accept the results. The next step here is I need to actually remove the bolt, right, or the nut on the end of the bolt. So let's go ahead now, and with both of these selected, I can easily just start dragging the geometry outward. And lastly, we'll go ahead and we'll drag our nut driver outward a little bit more. Okay. Come back and play the actual steps so we can see what that looks like. You can see how that is animating. Continuing along with the animation process, we're going to add a couple more steps. So the next thing that we need to do is maybe go ahead and interact on our nut driver again. Let's fade this out from view. I no longer need it in my animation. I can easily start interacting directly on some additional hardware. If I go ahead and select on it, again, we'll maybe change the color. We'll draw attention to that component. And once we do that, I can then easily explode that geometry outward. So I'm going to go ahead and select on both of my components, and we'll drag those outward. Continuing along with step 4, we're going to go ahead and start interacting on the other side of this ski. So again, I don't need my library components anymore. I can select on them. I can choose to fade them out from view so I don't see them in my animation or even in my augmented reality experience later on. Let's go ahead and rotate our ski around. Notice as I rotate, even though I'm recording as we speak, it's not recording the camera until I physically say, let's record the camera. So I can rotate the model as I see fit to interact with additional types of geometry. Again, we're going to go ahead and just to be consistent, we'll indicate color changes and translation. And the last step in the process here, let's go ahead and interact on the washer itself, change the color, and we'll go ahead and translate everything outward. So now that I've removed all the hardware from the ski, well, the last step is to actually pull the ski off of the spindle, right? And I can very easily do that with the final step, clicking Add Step. Let's go ahead now and interact with the spindle itself. Now the spindle contains additional types of hardware. I have the ability in Creo Illustrate to easily come in and select all of those components just by box selecting around the geometry itself and interacting on it. So now I have the spindle and all the hardware selected. Again, we'll go ahead and change the color and we'll translate just to be consistent. Okay. Now that I've finalized my animation, you can see here it took me maybe about 5-10 minutes to do, so very quick, very easy. I've created 5 different types of steps to go through a procedure on how to remove the actual ski from the snowmobile. Let's say I wanted to go ahead now and preview what this would look like. I can go ahead and select on my preview sequence option, and I can play each step individually by clicking the play button. Now here is step 1. We need to focus on removing the hardware. As you can see, the library components stayed in. You can see the rotation of the nut driver and the nut itself and the translation aspects. I also have the ability to select play all. So if I want to play this as an entire movie file, I can absolutely do that. And this is all dynamic and interactive. So as it's playing, I can actually rotate and pan and zoom the model to get a better idea of what we need to work on. So once my animation is complete, let's go ahead and leverage off of this first sequenced animation. And what we're going to do is use this animation and create a duplicate of it for a different type of augmented reality experience. Maybe an experience where we're physically overlaying digital information on the real part itself. Here you can see in Creo Illustrate, I have my first figure created. What we're going to do is select on it and choose to duplicate. This is going to give me an exact copy of it with all of my different steps, all of my animations that I've built out, and I can come in here now and edit this as I see fit. So in this case, this experience is going to be overlaid on top of the actual ski. If the ski is sitting right there in front of us, we want to see all the other digital information around the ski. It would make sense that the ski would not be visible in the animation. So I can easily select on that ski and choose to hide it out from my view. Selecting on Hide Selected is actually going to hide that component in all of my different steps. And as I click through these steps, you can see that those are now live and all up to date. Again, I can come back and I can preview the animation here that we've just modified to see what this might look like if we chose to exclude the ski. Let's go ahead and hit the Play All button. Okay, so we're going to stop our animation there. It looks pretty good. So upon completion of this, well, I want to go ahead now and manage this illustration back into my Windchill environment. So I want to save it off. I want to ensure that this illustration is version, iteration controlled, as well as linked up to my CAD data. How would I actually save this off? Well, with Creo Illustrate 5.0, using the direct connection, I can simply choose File and Save. That is actually going to save and upload this illustration, both animations, to my Windchill environment, check them in, and I'll now have those objects managed in the system. Any type of CAD changes that might occur within Windchill, we'll be able to propagate all those changes back down to my animations that I've built within Creo Illustrate. And this concludes the first portion of our demonstration. What I'm going to do now is turn it back to Stephanie. Stephanie?
Julian, thank you so much for your time today. That was very informative. If you'd like to learn more, we have some great content for you below in the resource library section.